Morning, good week. We're learning Masech Eruvin. Movi Shugavoya is the name of the chapter. Perikrishan is the first chapter. Still dealing with Movi, alleyway. Ulamai the Sleka Daitin Miko. So the Gemara now turns its attention back to the original assumption that Rabbi Yehuda's ruling is incompatible with the one cited by Rabbi Yirmiyah Abba in the name of Rab. The Gemara will now explain in detail the 2 points of contention which were originally thought to exist between the ruling of Rav and Rabbi Yehuda. But according to what we initially thought before of Shesh's qualification. Ben She'irvoy, Ben Shle'irvoy Peligi. Rabbi Yehuda, following Shmuel and Rav, argue, regardless of whether or not the Mavoi and the area to which it was breached made an Eruv together. In what point they argue concerning the case where they, the residents of two areas, made an Eruv. And therefore, the only reason to prohibit carrying in the Mavai is because the second area is breached as well to Reshus Rabim. It says in number 3, we initially assumed on 7b that Rab prohibited carrying in the Mavai even if it shared an Eruv with the Chotzer, with a courtyard to which it was breached, because the additional breach in the Chotzer's opposite wall renders the Mavai like one that is open to the Reshus Rabim at both ends. Why would Shmuel, whom Rabbi Yehuda is presumed to follow, argue in this point and rule in the identical situation presented by the case of the shepherd's village, that carrying in the Mavai remains permitted? So, in what point do they argue concerning the case where they, the residents of two areas, did not make an Eruv, but the second area is not breached to the Reshus Rabim? The Gemara implies in the case where the residents of the Mavid and the Chotzer did not make an Eruv together. And the question is whether to prohibit carrying in the Mavid because it is entirely breached into the Chotzer. Rav and Shmuel argue about the status of a partition that is visible from the outside but flush on the inside. In the cases above, the Mavi finds itself separated from the Chotzer, but just such a partition, Rav validates such a partition, but Shmuel does not. Be'irvu, in the case where they, the residents of two areas, made an Eruv together, and the question is only whether to prohibit carrying in the Mavai because it seems like an open Mavai, since the second area is also breached to the Reshus Rabim Kamuflage, the Rav Yosef. They argue, Rav and Shmuel argue about the following teaching that was later in a generation formulated by Rav Yosef. Rav Yosef, Lo Yishanu Ela Shekol Emtzor Rechovo. Regarding the ruling of Rav Yehuda in the case of the shepherd's village, that applies only Lo Yishanu Ela Shekol Emtzor Rechovo, when the Mavai terminates in the middle of the back lot, which extends beyond the Mavai on both sides. Only then did Rav Yehuda rule that no further correction is needed for the Mavai. In such a case, where the back lot extends on both sides beyond the Mavai, no one will mistake the Mavai for an open Mavai. But if the Mavai terminates at the side of the back lot, also it is prohibited to carry in the Mavai without further adjustment, because the Mavai then has the appearance of one that is open to Reshus Rabim at the end as well. So Rav Yosef taught that Rav Yehuda did not require any further adjustment to the mavoi if the back lot.
In the picture in the bottom on the right side, the back lot looks like a chutzner.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a closed thing. I don't know.
It's not a chutzner because it doesn't have an opening to a direct opening to it. If you notice, it's blocked. The only opening is to the mavoi that leads to the
into the back lot. Yeah.
Right.
So
no, but I'm saying in order to make it a chutzner, you probably need an bigger opening. Or maybe the size of it is not big enough to be called chutzner.
Okay.
So the Gemara says, Rav Yosef taught that Rav Yehuda did not require any further adjustment to the mavoi if the back lot extends beyond the mavoi on both sides of the breach between them. It is this law that the Gemara initially thought was a subject of dispute between Rav and Shmuel. This concludes the Gemara's explanation of its initial assumption. However, initial assumption regarding which of his teachers, Rav Yehuda, followed in his ruling. However, the Gemara already concluded on 7b that there is no reason to assume a dispute between Rav and Shmuel in any of these matters. So if we look at this diagram, we have three opinions. We have Rav Yehuda, Rav, and another opinion of Rav. The opinion of Rav is initially understood as finally understood. Okay, and a big difference in the rulings. We have two scenarios at hand that we're discussing. One, mavoi open to a chotzer with which it has no eruv, and another one is chotzer open to a shusarabim, opposite mavoi. You can see the diagram where Rav Yehuda says it's permitted, they're prohibited. In a case of mavoi open to chotzer without, with which it has no eruv, without an eruv.
We're looking at A and B there, right? Diagram A and B in the bottom, is that what we're looking at?
In 8A2, you have a diagram in the left column.
Right, A.
So it brings the opinion of Tosfos, how like Tosfos breaks it down. It's actually number 12.
Okay, right.
Number 12. It summarizes the initial final understanding of Rav's ruling in the case of a mavoi that was breached into a chotzer, which was in turn breached into a shusarabim. Anyway, going back to the Gemara, Maraba, had almost lemtzer chava muto. Now that you said that the Rav Yosef have said that when the mavoi terminates into the middle of a back lot, it is permitted to carry in the mavoi la'amor an ela ze shalei keneged ze. Was said this only when the mavoi and the breach in the back lot far wall are not one directly opposite the other. Aval ze keneged ze, but if they are one directly opposite the other, also it is prohibited to carry in the mavoi without further adjustment, because it has the appearance of an open mavoi, even though the back lot extends beyond either side of the mavoi. So Amar Rav Menashe Amitay. Rav Menashe Amitay said, Adam de Omar ze sheli keneged ze mutar. This that you, Rav Yosef, as qualified by Rabbah, have said that when the mavoi and the breach in the back lot far wall are not directly opposite the other, it is permitted to carry in the mavoi. We speak about a back lot owned by many people, but it's a back lot owned by individual. Sometimes the owner changes his mind about it. He decides, alters the nature of the back lot and builds houses for it in that part of the back lot that is wider than the mavoi. And it is then like a movie that terminates at the side of a backlot.
I also looked at it opposite, but all right.
And it is forbidden to carry there. However, when the backlot is owned by several people, it's far less likely that they will reach mutual agreement on altering the nature of the backlot by building houses there. Where do you derive that we make a distinction between backlot owned by many people and a backlot owned by individual? There was an incident concerning a certain mavoi. Was one side terminated to the sea, and one side terminated to a trash heap. But Rabbi, no matter came before Rabbi, for a decision on whether or not it was permitted to carry in that mavoi. And he did not rule whether it's permitted or not. He refused to rule. You couldn't say it's prohibited because there was mechitzos. There was walls, partitions existed. It did not say it's permitted to carry. We're concerned that the trash heap might be removed, or that the sea might bring up sediment, creating an area of silt against the present wall of the sea, thereby depriving the mavoi of that wall. Thereby, while carrying in this mavoi was technically permissible, Rabbi would not sanction it for fear that these changes would occur. Yet people would continue to carry in the mavoi as they were accustomed to previously. But are we concerned that a trash heap might be removed? Not. We learned in a Mishnah. If there is a trash heap in the Shusarab 10 tefachim high, one may throw on Shabbos into the trash heap from a window that is above it. But this would not be permitted if we were concerned that the trash heap might be removed, and people would continue to throw refuse out of the window to the street below. Alma, consequently, there's a difference between a trash heap owned by many people and a trash heap owned by an individual. Rabbi was dealing with a private trash heap whose owner might decide at any time to remove it. The Mishnah, on the other hand, refers to a publicly owned trash heap, as evidenced by the fact that it is in the public domain, and it is far less likely that its collective owners will mutually agree to remove it. Hachanami, here too, in the case of a mavoi that was breached into the middle of the backlot, there's a difference between a backlot owned by many, where we need not anticipate structural changes, and a backlot owned by individual, where we must anticipate such changes, as asserted by Rabbi Menashe. And what did the sages, the other sages of Rebbe's generation, rule about the mavoi that was bounded by a trash heap and the sea? One side of trash pile and one side ocean. The sages prohibit carrying in that mavoi because they consider the possibility of structural changes sufficient grounds to definitely prohibit carrying in the mavoi even now. Amar Rav Nachman, halacha kedivrei chachamim. Halacha is in accordance with the words of the sages that carrying in such a mavoi is forbidden unless walls are constructed. Sages permit carrying in that mavoi, and they do not share Rebbe's concern about possible structural change. Rav Nachman says halacha doesn't follow the words of the sages that it's permitted. Rather, Rebbe's concern must be taken into consideration. So really, if you look at the diagram, it shows you that the trash heap is the wall.
Yeah.
I picture the trash heap to be on the edge of being the just one side is the sea, one side I picture in my mind an alleyway. One side is the sea, one side is the trash heap. But over here, it seems like the trash heap is the lechi.
I don't know who's going to live like this. To have the trash heap.
Nobody lives in a move. Move is just a question.
No, I'm saying, I mean, would you want your house to open up and the next thing you see is a garbage dump? Like in, let's say, Staten Island, when they had those dumps. Remember the tremendous dumps on the Staten Island Expressway at one point?
Where did it come from? People would throw it there?
No, it was owned by the city, and they said they would dump all the garbage there.
So Merema Apostle Sur Bozle. Let's see. Merema separated Mavos of the town of Sura from the sea, to which they terminated with partitions. Omar Hashin Shemayalem Sirton. And he had the same concern. He said, maybe we're concerned that the sea might bring up sediment, therefore we cannot rely on the wall of the sea as partition. There was a certain bent move in Sura, maybe Syria. They, the resident of one leg of the move, rolled up a mat and placed it in the move's bend to serve as lechi, so that they could carry in the leg of the move. The method of correcting the bent move follows neither Rav nor Shmuel, who disagree on how to correct a bent move. According to Rav, who says that its law is that of an open move. It needs a tzuras pesach at the end. And even according to Shmuel, who says that its law is that of a closed move. That is only when both ends are adjusted with a proper lechi. Since the wind blows at it and throws it down, it's considered nothing. It is not a valid lechi. It's not a valid beam. Therefore, it would not be permitted to carry even in that leg of the move for which this lechi had been erected. But if one thrust a peg into the rolled mat and affixed it to the wall so that it will not cast down by the wind, he has affixed it, and it indeed serves as a valid lechi. If the move was breached along its entirety, and if it's a chotzer chenegdoi and a chotzer was breached opposite the move, chotzer muteres, the chotzer is permitted, the move also, and the move is permitted. Move is prohibited, chotzer is permitted, move will be prohibited unless adequate adjustment are made. The Gemara concluded above that carrying in the move is forbidden because it is entirely open to the chotzer, but shares no eruv with it. Carrying in the chotzer, however, remains permitted because it is wider than the move, thus has in it the ends of the intervening wall, which serves as one-way partition separating it from the move. Amar le Rav Barul Ravi v'Rabai. Rabbi Menashe Amitay. My teacher, isn't this ruling of Rav actually our Mishnah? A small chotzer was breached into a large one. Carrying in the large one is permitted, but carrying in the small one is prohibited, because it is like an entrance of the large one. What does Rav teach us more than we already know from the Mishnah? If from there, alone without Rav's ruling, this applies only where the public does not travel through it. Since the Mishnah does not mention that the back of the second chotzer was breached to the street, perhaps carrying in the larger chotzer is permitted only in such a case. But where the public walks through it, I might have said that carrying even in the chotzer is also prohibited, because the chotzer is in some way turned into a public thoroughfare. A chotzer which the public enters from this end and exits from the other end, as it has entrances to the street at both ends, is Reshus Harabim as regards to the laws of Tumah, since it is frequently, or it is frequented by the public. Reshus HaYochid, as regards carrying there on the Shabbos, since it is legal, it is legally enclosed. We see from this brayso that it is permitted to carry in an enclosed area even if it is used as a thoroughfare. So why then did Rav have to state this his own? This permit to carry in a legally enclosed thoroughfare applies only where this opening to the street is not directly opposite the other opening to the street, so that the public does not have a direct route or direct route through the enclosure. But when this opening to the street is directly opposite the other, I would say that carrying is not permitted in the enclosure. Therefore, another ruling was necessary to teach that it is permitted to carry in an enclosure, even if its own opening to the street are directly opposite one another. And since Rav did not indicate otherwise, we can say that it is to precisely such a case that Rav referred to. Rav also had Rav Maimukilo, according to Rabbah, who said that when the Movei and the breach in the back lots far wall are one directly opposite the other, it is forbidden to carry in the Movei. How does he interpret this ruling of Rav? To a case where the Movei and the breach are in the Chotzer far wall are not one directly opposite the other. Tartel Amali, why do I need both rulings? Why did Rav what did Rav add to the Tanoic ruling? So if from there the Baisa that considers the enclosure used as a thoroughfare as a Reshus HaYochid for the Shabbos alone, this applies only as regard to throwing into it from Reshus Harabim. Such enclosure remains a biblical Reshus HaYochid, to which it is biblically prohibited to transfer objects from Reshus Harabim or vice versa. As regards to carrying within the enclosure, I would say that it is not permitted. Kamashmalan, Rav teaches us in his ruling that carrying within the chotzer is permitted, and the rabbis did not decree any prohibition despite the traffic that passes through the enclosure. In Movei also kinado, Movei that is shaped like a
centipede.
Centipede.
A lot of legs, 100 legs.
Yeah. Centipede. Omar Abaye oise tzuras haPesach legodel. One makes a tzuras haPesach, a doorway shape for the large Movei at its main entrance. And all these legal Moveis are adjusted through a lechi or koiro. This follows the opinion of Shmuel, who says that a bent Movei, the law of a bent Movei is that of a closed Movei. So why do I need a shape of an entrance? There was a certain bent Movei in our door, and they reckoned Rav's opinion that a bent Movei has the laws of an open Movei. How then can you simply follow Shmuel's view and ignore the dissenting opinion of Rav? One makes a tzuras haPesach, a doorway shape or entrance shape for each of them, the lateral Moveis on this side, and on the other side where the lateral Moveis and the large Movei exit to the street, they are adjusted through a lechi or koiro. Placed there, this is consistent with Rav's way of adjusting a bent move. Amar Rav Kana bar Tchalev mishmed Rav Kana bar Menyum mishmed Rav Kana Malki mishmed Rav Kana Rabbi de Rav v'amru Rav Kana be Malki Ainu Rav Kana Rabbi de Rav Move should see the Chadoroch Move whose one side is long we see the Chad Kotzo one side is short. First Ma'arba is less than 4 amas maniach sekir balachsan. One may place the koiro diagonally from the edge of the long side. You can see the diagram there. The edge of the long side, 4 amis, 4 amis or more. He may place the koiro only opposite the short side. In either case, even when the difference in length between the two sides is less than 4 amis, he may place the koiro only opposite the short side, at right angles to it. And I will explain my reason. And I will explain their reason. The reason of the various of Kahanas who rule differently above. What is the reason for koiro mishum eker? It's just a reminder. When you do it diagonally, it is not a reminder. I'll explain their reason. Koiro mishum, what's the purpose of koiro? What function does it serve according to their view? Mishum mechitza, serve as a partition. Diagonally is also a partition. Our kind of Shmat Chani is a teaching of Kohanim. It was passed down through a succession of sages named Kahanim. Ema Bamilta, whose name is also Kahana, I will say something about it. You said about placing a koiro diagonally across the uneven move. We said it is only if the diagonal is not more than 10 amas long. But if the diagonal is more than 10 amas, so everyone agrees that he may place the koiro only opposite the short side. What is the law concerning carrying directly under the koiro? Rabbi Yochanan, three rabbis, Rabbi Yochanan said you're allowed to use the space. It's permitted to carry directly under. Shmuel v'Rabbi Shimon b'Rabbi v'Rabbi Shimon v'Lokish Amru also l'shtamish tachas hakoiro. It says it's forbidden to do it. Leim b'akam infligim. Should we say that this is what they argue about? The mouse of a komishumeker. One rabbi said the purpose of the koiro is for heker, for identifying it, recognizing it, reminder. And one rabbi said it really serves as a partition. The Gemara says, everyone agrees that koiro is there. This koiro is there for reminder. What did they argue about? One authority holds that the reminder should be from the inside. Attention of those who are coming from the inside. And one says that attention should be the ones that are coming from the outside. Or you can say everybody agrees that the purpose of the koiro is for mechitza, for partition. So what did they argue about? One authority holds that the koiro's inner edge is legally viewed as if it descends and partitions the entrance of the maveh, whereas the authority, the sages who permit carrying under the koiro, holds that the koiro's outer edge is legally viewed as if it descends and partitions the entrance of the maveh. All agree, even those who permit carrying under the koiro, concerning the area opposite the lechi, it is forbidden to carry there. Baruch Hama asked of Chisda the following question: if one thrusts 2 pegs into 2 sides walls of a move from the outside so that they extend over the street, you can look at the diagram. And he placed koiro on top of the pegs. Now, what is the law? Amar Leil Diva Amatir, also according to the opinion of those who permit carrying directly under the kairo, it is forbidden to carry in a maveh adjusted with such a protruding kairo. L'divrei Oisar mutar, and according to the opinion of those who forbid carrying directly under a kairo, it is permitted to carry in a maveh adjusted with a protruding kairo. Rav Omar Divrei Oisar nami also. Even according to the opinion of those who forbid carrying under a kairo, it is also forbidden to carry in a maveh adjusted with such protruding kairo, because ba'inan kairo al gabe maveh v'leika will require that the kairo be on top of the maveh, and that is lacking in this case. Eisi Ravada or Masna Rava, or must now object to the statement of Rava on the force of the following Baisa Oisa Kairosa, if the maveh was mishucho oiteluya, if it's drawn from the maveh walls or suspended between them. Pachos megimel ein tzorch lavi kairo. Gimel tzorch lavi kairo. If it was less than 3 tvachim away from the maveh walls, he doesn't have to bring ein tzorch lavi kairo acheres. But if it was, meaning that one does not have to bring another kairo since the present kairo is valid. If the kairo was 3 or more tvachim away from the maveh walls, he needs to bring another kairo. Continue, God willing, tomorrow.
Very beautiful tonight, maybe.